want to introduce Reverend Ken Waddell. He's here from Hamilton Medical Center, where he serves as the head chaplain there. And I asked him if he'd come out and speak with us a little bit about his faith and how it influences his work in the medical field, and also maybe speak about the other people that he works with and maybe how their faith helps them as well. So I'll just turn it over to you.
All right.
Let's welcome Ken.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here tonight. Pleasure to be with you, and I'm glad to serve together with a wonderful team of people in the Ministry of Healthcare here in Dalton, Georgia. Hamilton Medical Center, in my view, is one of the best kept secrets in the world, really. I think it's an outstanding place, and it has grown and developed as things have changed. Started out, I guess many of you know, started out in a pandemic, and here we are again celebrating the centennial of the hospital 100 years later with a pandemic now at this time. And so the ways that you and other people in this particular place in God's creation have responded to the need for the Ministry of Healthcare has been exceptional. So I want to say thank you to you. Thank you, Chris, for what you're doing. Thank you for inviting me to be a colleague in ministry with you. One of the things that I appreciate about Chris is that I got to know him because he came to the hospital to visit members of this congregation that were in need. And he knew, as do I as the chaplain, that the best person to provide ministry with someone is the pastor of their congregation. And he came and responded and was there and continues to respond and to be there and to communicate with me whenever there's a time when he may be on vacation or on study leave or engaged in another ministry that's essential for his ministry and his well-being. And he lets me know, hey, Chaplain Ken, would you please check on someone who's there? And I'm always honored to do that. So it's a partnership that Chris and I share, as do other people in ministry around the community here, and the network of people that are also involved in congregations like your own that are vital and continuing to grow, to seek vision, and to find a way to make it through the challenges that are part of our world today. So as we're moving through the pandemic, we're having some conversations at the table tonight about our experiences with COVID, each of us in our own way. Is there anybody that's never experienced COVID yourself? Okay? Keep your hand up if you've never known someone else who experienced COVID. Okay, so everybody in the room has at least known someone else if you yourself haven't had COVID. And fortunately, we're still alive. And unfortunately, we've seen many people who have died through this pandemic. And so count ourselves among those that are fortunate enough to continue to be alive and be well among the challenges in our world for many people across the world that have felt the impact of this personally and have loved ones who have died from it. So there was a surgeon in the hospital I passed by just in the elevator just yesterday who surprised me. He was not wearing a mask. He said, I'm on my way to get my mask. He said, and I really think that we're almost to the point where we don't even need to wear masks anymore at all, maybe even here in the hospital. So I was encouraged to hear that coming from a surgeon, and am thankful that I understood when you had your fellowship dinners that everybody wore a mask at first, boxed lunches and dinners and things like that. Things have changed. People would wear a mask, sometimes take it off. Now people seem to come in without one. Hopefully we're in a position now where some of the things that have been a challenge in the past are not as much of a challenge now. There will probably be new things, they say, and so watching out for them and taking whatever precautions we can, receiving the benefit of vaccinations, and those who have provided a way to utilize their brain and wisdom to do the kind of things that God gave them talents to do to help us all, I think is the key to moving forward with a healthy path. So thank you all for doing what you can to stay safe and to promote well-being throughout our community in whatever ways are possible for you. There's a lot that I can say about the hospital, about myself, about the Ministry of Healthcare, but I really would like to hear from you questions you have, comments, anything that you would like to hear about. before I drone on too long to put you to sleep. I've likened myself to being like an anesthesiologist as a preacher sometimes. You know, my job is to help people get some good rest and then wake them up at the appropriate time, and then they're better off after that. So what, if any, questions, comments, interests that you have tonight as we gather regarding the ministry of healthcare or whatever the topic is tonight? Any?
Are you employed by the hospital or employed by a
Great question. Am I employed by the hospital or someone else? So I was ordained as a Presbyterian PCUSA pastor in 1987. So 35 years ago, just had a seminary class reunion not long ago with the Graduate Theological Union out in San Francisco Theological Seminary. There's about 10 different organizations that have graduate theological seminaries there together. And from that point, I continued to be employed by congregations where I was serving. And I was employed in an internship in Boise, Idaho for about a year during my 4 years of seminary education. That was after I had been down in San Antonio, Texas, received a Bachelor of Arts in sociology, mass communications. And after seminary, I went first to Paris, France, and served at the American Church in Paris, France for 4 years. My son was born there. We were employed by that congregation and what's called the American Foreign Christian Union, the AFCU. So those two congregations, those two organizations were employing me for the first 4 years of my ministry after graduation. Then I came back to Perry, Oklahoma, and was called by God to be the pastor there. So my first solo pastor position was there, Perry, Oklahoma, which anybody ever heard of Ditch Witch, trenchers, and boring equipment? That's where their headquarters is. Ed and Mary Malzahn were members of the congregation. I had the fortune to pastor there. And so that congregation employed me at that time. Then I went to Uvalde, Texas. Anybody ever heard of Uvalde? Okay. In the news more recently for reasons that we wish it wasn't in the news. I was there for 8.5 years as the pastor of that congregation. So that congregation was employing me at that time. Ironically, I turned 40 years old when I was in Uvalde, and I'd been involved in Walk to Emmaus. Anybody ever heard of that before? I think the Methodist tradition has a strong connection with the Walk to Emmaus. One of the most wonderful experiences of my life, being on a Walk to Emmaus, and then getting to serve as spiritual director for about 12 different walks and chrysalises, the youth version experience of those. So people from the Uvalde Emmaus community bonded together and said, we want to do something special for Ken for his 40th birthday. And so they bought me a gift. And anybody have an idea what the gift was? Down in Uvalde, Texas. No, it wasn't a suitcase. No. Wasn't a cowboy hat. That's a good guess.
Steak dinner.
Not a steak dinner. That's a good guess, too. More valuable than a steak dinner and more valuable than a cowboy hat. Not boots. No. All those things I might be wearing if I was going out to engage in one of the most popular recreational activities in Uvalde, Texas, though. Yeah, sport is a sporting type event. No, not a rodeo. You're usually out in the woods, often waiting for quite a time. Need to be patient. Deer hunting, yes, right. So I learned to deer hunt in Uvalde, Texas, and in the first 5 years or so that I was there, I was usually borrowing deer hunting rifles from a lot of different people. And so on my 40th birthday, they gave me one, 257 Roberts. And so one of the memories I have of Uvalde is that that's the place where I became a gun owner as a deer hunting rifle, and gun safety was emphasized, and went to the shooting range and taught everybody that ever shared in the practice together with me the importance of being safe. Unfortunately, now we know that Uvalde is also a place where there were school shootings, and so ironically, it is between these experiences of the known and the unknown, between the safe and the unsafe, between what is healthy, what is unhealthy, that I believe God is present, and God continues to be present. So for me in my faith, even in the midst of tragedy and trauma and illness, I believe that God continues to call me and others who choose to be a part of God's healing presence. And so that's part of the reason that I'm now where I am. After Uvalde, I came to Calhoun, served as a pastor of the church in Calhoun, who employed me there. And then after I finished there for 5 years, I began serving part-time at the Lafayette Presbyterian Church. So not far from here. Lived here in Dalton and drove over there. And during that time also, I learned from a neighbor of mine in Calhoun that the hospice at Hamilton was looking for someone else to help out the chaplain because the census was growing. More and more people were dying and in need of end-of-life care. And she wondered if I knew anyone that was interested. And I said, yes, happen to know someone. And so that's how I started at Hamilton. I was started out volunteering and then being the hospice chaplain and volunteering in the hospital. And then eventually I became the chaplain. And so the hospital does employ me as a full-time chaplain. Very honored to serve as the hospital's chaplain. And so one of the things that you may think that I do, which is true, is visit patients in the hospital. It's probably one of the most important things I do. Also, though, my task involves visiting families, loved ones, clergy, others that are visiting there, any other guests that are there, and the staff of the hospital. So do you know how many people would you guess H.H. Hamilton Healthcare System employs? Raise your hand if you think there's over 1,000 employees there. Okay, over 1,500, over 2,000. I think Kevin, you may know better than I do. I was thinking around 2,500 altogether in all the shifts and all the Hamilton long-term care facilities now that are part of the operation and the things that are around the community here. It's a lot of people. And so there's a lot of people that have real lives, just like you and I do, real needs, real challenges and situations. They have death and loss in their family, in their loved ones. One of the first calls that I got after becoming the full-time chaplain was from a colleague of mine who said, "Hey Ken, do you ever visit anybody in jail?" We were talking at the table about someone that works at the Whitfield County Jail here. I said, sure, of course. And a part of my faith is consistent with what we find in Matthew chapter 25. What did you do to the least of these brothers and sisters of mine? When I was sick and in prison, you came and visited me. And those who received the reward and affirmation, well done, my good and faithful servant, were among the most surprised. They said, wait a minute, when did we do this to you? And Jesus said, when you did it to the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you have done it unto me. And so I believe that the call of people that serve together in the ministry of healthcare, the many staff members that are there in so many different ways, is a call of faith. It's a specific vocation that they share together with all of us. So it is really an honor and a privilege to be able to walk together with them, to be companions with them, to listen to them, and to recognize that there are stresses and strains on people that need to be there for other people that are in stressful and straining situations. And that has a great impact upon them. And so to be there for the staff, particularly through the pandemic, is something that I recognize is probably one of the greatest priorities for me as a chaplain. And I'm thankful for those in the hospital over the last decade that have partnered together with me to create a chaplain training program. So after I finished pastoring the Lafayette Presbyterian Church, which partnered together with me to start CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education, the hospital took on the program. And so now we're training chaplains and pastoral care clinicians at the hospital and in various other sites around the community. We have people that are working with people that are homeless in several different places, several different states. We have people that are in different prisons and criminal justice situations. We have people that are working with hospices. We have people that are in other hospitals, as well as our own, that are partnering together, sharing best practices so we can grow in our own self-awareness and emotional intelligence to be the best self that we can to provide self-care for others. So we use ourselves as the primary instrument of pastoral care and counseling, and we grow in our practice to become reflective practitioners. So I learned so much from the other colleagues that are part of Hamilton Healthcare System, as well as people that I have the good fortune to meet that are patients in the hospital, families, other pastors. So that's a long answer to your short question. Does anybody else have any other questions? sorry for going on and on there.
Can you take us through what would be a typical day as chaplain in the hospital?
Okay, great question. What's a typical day as a chaplain in the hospital? So a typical day would include many surprises. And so one of the greatest things that I love about being a chaplain at the hospital is that life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And so today, I can tell you a little bit about today. So walking into the hospital, anticipating that I was going to be here in the community, be here together with you, I came in a little bit later than I normally do, and I missed the morning huddle that I often go to at 8:30 in the morning. When I go to the morning huddle, I'm there together with other directors and managers and executives and other people that happen to be there to listen for what's happening in the pulse of the operation. What do we need to be aware of? How can we share the most pertinent things with one another so that we can, as much as possible, be on the same page and be engaged most effectively in what's happening today? And so that typical day, hopefully, would include being there at the morning huddle and being available to connect with whoever that has whatever issues that are there. So being present is one of the most important things for me as a chaplain, the ministry of presence. Being there, waiting, listening for God, listening for direction, and listening for whatever needs are most critical that might pop up. But today I walked in and I walked into the connector bridge that's on the ground level on Memorial Road, which used to be a road that we could drive through. Now it's blocked off by the connector bridge. So that connects the People's Cancer Institute. I think it's a $50 million building that was just built and opened up within the last couple of years here that is a one-stop shop for all cancer care. And so all the people that are there receive outpatient care. Nobody spends the night there, but there was a patient today who was spending the night in Hamilton Medical Center in the hospital who was coming across through the passageway there on the ground to receive cancer treatment. And so I had the good pleasure to meet the two people that were wheeling him over and to meet him and to have a great encounter with him, to learn what room he was in up in the medical ICU, so that later in the day he invited me to come back, and I had the privilege to go back and see him and to meet his daughter who was there. And so that was a part of my day today that popped up in the midst of that. There was another patient not long before that who I was on the task list where I receive referrals from other doctors, nurses, and clinicians to follow up with patients that are in need of a chaplain for whatever reason that may be. Some of them are just asking for the hospital clergy to come to visit with them, provide prayer, support, listening, pastoral counseling, whatever it may be. Others are asking for help regarding advanced directives. Anybody have your own advanced directive for healthcare? How many knows what an advanced directive for healthcare is? Some people call it a living will. It's a document that gives you the opportunity to designate your wishes. So if you're ever in a situation where you're unable to speak for yourself, God forbid, in a car accident, anything else, fall, bump your head, not able to speak for yourself, your advanced directive gives you the chance to say in advance what your directions are for what you want done and who you want to do it. So who is your healthcare agent? Who's the person you want to speak on your behalf to make your medical decisions? So it is a power of attorney. But when you think of power of attorney, raise your hand if you think of money, property, other things related to power of attorney. That's what most people think of with a power of attorney. This has nothing to do with money or property or those kinds of issues, but has everything to do, and only everything to do, with health care. So it's a power of attorney for health care. So why do chaplains deal with that? Usually because a lot of people associate end-of-life issues with a healthcare advance directive. And so if you're thinking about considering conversations about what's going to happen when I'm no longer here, some people think that chaplains are the ones to be able to connect with people to have those conversations. Are you at peace with what might happen if you die today and are not here tomorrow? So for me, my faith gives me that peace, gives me the opportunity to be able to have those conversations, and having the difficult conversation may give peace of mind to others. And so I was doing an advance directive consultation, and I called down to see if a witness was available to provide a witness for the signing of the advance directive, and our volunteers were not there at the time. So I went out in the hall searching for a witness today, as sometimes is the case. And I saw another man walking down the hall wearing clothes like I typically wear, walking a little slower, and his back was to me, and I thought, I wonder if that's a pastor. And so I went and caught up to him, and sure enough it was. And he had been in the hospital in a while, and he was going the wrong way, and he was stopping to ask directions. I said, I can show you where that is. So we turned around, I was on the way back, and I said, would you be willing to take an extra 5 minutes or so to come with me to witness an advanced directive in the medical ICU? And he did. He said he had been in the ministry for 52 years. And he's a volunteer pastor locally here now at a congregation. So very nice to meet him. And as I promised him after he witnessed the signature, I walked him down to the room where he was going. So I met another patient down there that was not on my list, not a part of my expectations, but a wonderful man. And he was a patient who said, now I don't ever want to be hooked up to machines. I don't ever want to do that. And then the pastor who was there said, well, do you have that written down anywhere? Have you already done an advanced directive? He said, no. He said, but my family knows it. And the pastor said, well, that's good that they know it, but it'd be good if you get an advanced directive. And this guy right here can help you with that. So we did. And so that was another part of my day. We also respond to people that have addiction issues. We do a thing called an SBIRT. Anybody ever heard of an SBIRT? Okay. Do you want to tell people what that stands for? Do you remember?
I remember what all it stands for.
Okay.
Several different things.
Okay, all right. So an SBIRT is a screening, brief intervention, referral for treatment. This may be something different from what you were experiencing, but it often comes up when questions are asked in assessments about drinking alcohol, using drugs, or having other addiction issues. And if that's the case, it can trigger an SBIRT referral, and the chaplain will go and visit with people about how you cope with stress, how you make it through difficult times in your life. And if addiction is a part of that experience, we're there with unconditional positive regard. Carl Rogers' client-centered care is part of the theory that guides me in our approach and what I train others in CPE to do. And so with unconditional positive regard, we listen and we acknowledge and we notice some things that sometimes the stress and the challenges will cause us to do things that are unhealthy. And sometimes it becomes automatic, it becomes a habit. And so without knowing it, we sometimes lose capacity to be healthy and find a positive walk in life because of those things that are there. And so if that's the case, have you ever tried to change? Have you ever tried to cut back on that behavior? Are you interested in finding more resources or ways to move forward in a new path that would be healthier? And some people say yes, absolutely. Some people break down and cry. And so we are with them in their tears, and we listen, and we invite them to keep on processing and thinking about the meaning, purpose of their life, reasons why they might want to change. Sometimes that reconnects with their faith. Some people have a sense of incredible guilt for being away from connections in their life where they've been before, like congregations like this. Maybe the pandemic or other things came up and they fell away. Or something happened in interpersonal relationships. That never happens in this church, I'm sure, right? Everybody gets along all the time with everybody all the time, and there's never seeing one thing differently than another. So if that's the case, then this is a miracle church. I've never been in one like it. But it's finding a path through the difficulties and challenges, being able to see things differently and acknowledge that there's a way that we can still be brothers and sisters and find a path together that we aim and hope for, I think. That's part of my vision for the way I hope we can be together. And so some people choose to have resources and engage in activity to change. And the same thing is true with smoking cessation. We have a Freedom from Smoking clinic that we now offer at the People's Cancer Institute that I facilitate together with Midge Gibson, who's our social worker there. So that's another thing that's a part of my day for a unit. We're having the Great American Smokeout. The American Cancer Society is sponsoring, is coming up in November. Once a year, they set that as a date so that anybody that wants to quit smoking can set a date and plan and prepare for that and have the success and freedom of quitting smoking. So I see you nodding your head back there. You familiar with that? The Great American Smokeout or the American Cancer Society? Heard of it? Okay, good. So there's still opportunity. If you or anyone you know would like to engage in freedom from smoking, to consider the possibility of preparing to quit smoking, to have that freedom, Tuesday, 11:30 a.m., People's Cancer Institute. I'm cordially inviting you to be a part of that. And November the 1st is the designated quit day for that group that's currently there. And if you want to set another date, we'll be glad to support you in whatever ways we can in that way as well. So part of what I do as a chaplain in a typical day is preventative health care and helping people be prepared for end-of-life situation, thinking in advance, advanced care planning, and whatever else emerges. So, great question. Any other questions?
I don't mean to kind of put you on the spot.
Not a problem.
Is there a story you have that was a real God moment? You know, that just God showed up at Hamilton and that you...
Oh yeah, there are lots and lots of them. Absolutely. Gosh, let's see. Well, one for me was a situation with a patient who was in our surgical ICU, and this was probably 9 years ago or longer. And I received a call from some of the staff about this patient who was right on the verge of needing to be on life support. And so she and her family were trying to make decisions about what it was that would be best and most appropriate for her. And so I engaged in somewhat of an advanced directive consultation with her, listening to her about some of her wishes, healthcare agent, and then in treatment preferences, she said, well, yeah, I want to be on machines. I want them to do everything possible. And I've seen movies about people that are in a coma and they wake up from that. And if that's the case, then I want to be able to wake up. And I said, okay, that's, whatever you want, we'll honor your wishes, whatever they are, and we'll honor that and document that as you choose. And she said, and also, I know that I might suffer. And if I do, that's okay. And so I then engaged in active listening, which is mirroring what I'm hearing and then checking that back out with her. I said, I understand that you believe that you might suffer and if you suffer, that's okay. And she said, yeah, that's right, because that's what Jesus said. I said, oh, so your understanding is that Jesus said that you need to suffer. She said, yeah, it says right there in the Bible, suffer the little children unto me. I said, okay. So you remember those words of Jesus, suffer the little children unto me, and you understand that to mean that you need to suffer as a child of God. She said, yeah, isn't that what that means? And I said, well, I can see why you would think that that's what that means. There's different interpretations for different scriptures and words in the sacred texts that are there. And if that's what you choose to believe, that's your choice. I have a different understanding, but I'm happy to honor your. Well, what do you believe? What do you think it means, Pastor? You're the chaplain. Tell me what it means. I said, well, I think it's important for everyone to have their own understanding and to come to that conclusion however they may choose to do so. My understanding is that Jesus was inviting the children to come to Him, to be with Him, and to come to know Him, and that even in the midst of suffering and experiencing health and wellness, that God is always with us. I don't think that He was talking specifically, literally, figuratively about human suffering when He said that. And for me, it was a God moment when she began to open her mind and her soul to understand that passage in a new way. And it led to a different decision about her medical treatment choices. And she was able then eventually to move into a situation where she was more accepting of her condition. And she said, I really don't want to be stuck on machines and things like that and put my family through the suffering of having to make a choice to do something that I want to choose right now because I'm ready to be with Jesus. And whenever that time comes, I want that to happen peacefully and comfortably, and I'm ready to go when that time comes. So that, to me, that was a God moment. That was a change of heart, a change of mind, and that may not have happened had we not had that conversation. There are many others too. I think of people who have had severe illnesses and there was one man I remember who was in the ICU, in the medical ICU back before we did the renovations. Kevin, you remember when that was? And what's now the medical ICU waiting area was the places where the patient rooms were. And there was a man who was on the ventilator, and he'd been on the ventilator for about 30 days. And his condition had improved, but his family wanted him to stay on the ventilator. But he was an extremely faithful man. He had people from his congregation that were coming in, multiple different congregations he had been a part of. They were coming in on a regular basis. They were singing and praying. They were having worship there in the MICU. And he was on the ventilator. He continued to improve. He finally got to the point where he was able to communicate only by nodding his head, just enough that people paying close attention could confirm that his responses were meaningful. He reached the stage where he said, "I'm ready to die. Take me off of this machine. And if I die, I'll be ready to be with God. And if I live, I'll celebrate and ready to have a new life." And together they had prayer, put their hands together around his bed. They took the tube out, and in the matter of several days, he was up and talking and walking again. He came back 6 months later and was celebrating together with everybody who had been a part of the plan of care. So he had that kind of experience. To me, that's a God moment. So it's a real privilege to be able to see God at work in so many ways. To see staff members who I know have the capacity to retire and move on to other work, and people who have the opportunity to get paid more to do other things with their life that choose to stay on at Hamilton Medical Center. That to me is a God experience as well. So it's just a real great privilege to be able to be a part of the associates at Hamilton Healthcare System and to share what we call the heart of Hamilton there, and to be here with you, with people in this community that are so supportive of this place that we call home. So thank you again.
Any other questions? What are the biggest challenges that y'all are facing right now?
I think probably one of the biggest challenges right now is finding enough staff to care for as many people as we can effectively and efficiently. We have a nursing shortage. We have a shortage of other key staff and personnel. And so if there's anyone that you know who is interested in the Ministry of Healthcare in any discipline, I encourage you to find a way that maybe as a congregation or people in the community that you can support them in their education and training to be able to come and serve at the hospital to keep up the great legacy that is currently there. Because we have a great need for people who are willing to come and serve together in that capacity. So, Kevin, do you think of any other challenges that are greater than that right now?
Staffers, the biggest one that drives a lot.
Yeah.
Not just skilled people, it's any position.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, one of the things that I know is environmental services workers, for example, people that do the cleaning in the hospital are in a great short supply. So if you know of anyone, and the place is open 24/7. So if people have other part-time jobs or other things that they need to do, they can still get a part-time job or help out in some small way that makes a huge difference. The food services staff that's there, they're providing meals and food and preparation and cleaning, information technology. There's so many people behind the scenes at the hospital, so many different things. So anything that can be done to help them. I was even thinking about a church that wanted to donate gift cards to be given to some of the associates who work in the lower salary brackets to help them with gas, as the price of gas and the economy, the recession coming, and whatever things might be needed economically. A gift card like that, just to say thank you to those folks, and let some of the directors of different departments select people that are appropriate or recognize and honor them. So I would like to see more support for our CPE program, maybe even having a CPE resident program. We now have the Georgia Medical Education resident program for doctors. Did any of you know that one of the highest suicide rates is among physicians? It is. And so I'm so thankful that we now have a training program for medical doctors here at Hamilton Healthcare System too, part of the Georgia Medical Education program. Many hospitals have alongside of that resident program a chaplain CPE resident program. So if in the future we had the opportunity and funding to be able to support that, that's something that I think would be wonderful too, and it would give more continuity in care. People could make a commitment to stay not just for a 12 or 15 week period for one CPE unit or a course, but they could stay for the whole year for 4 and become board certified. So that's another thing that I'm hoping for in Ken Waddell's vision for the future. Other questions, comments anyone has?
We'd like to pray for you.
Thank you.
Is there anything in particular for you, for your family, or for the people that you work with?
I always appreciate prayers. Prayers for me, prayers for other chaplains, other people that are in the CPE training program right now. For our patients, there are people that are alive today that are expected to probably die within the next 24 hours. For those that are grieving the loss of loved ones, people that like everyone in the room acknowledge being impacted by the pandemic and the realities there. Prayers for continuing to recognize how fortunate we are to live a life filled with gestures of gratitude. Kevin, you may have other specific needs that I may not know of. Well, Christopher, your wife and the others that are working in the neonatal intensive care unit, caring for I remember Terry Woodruff that used to be a manager over in that area that now is the director of the Anna Shaw Children's Institute for children with autism spectrum disorder and developmental disabilities. I remember when she was back in the NICU in the children's area, she said, these patients that are here in the NICU, the ones that wear the smallest diapers command the most number of our staff to take care of them. So certainly for those little patients that are there in the NICU and their significant others, those who are to advocate for them, people that are most vulnerable. Any other prayer requests you can think of, Kevin? Yeah.
Well, could we have you? Could we circle around you and
Sure.
and pray for
Certainly.
you?
And anybody else that's part of Hamilton, Kevin, or anybody else?
Absolutely. Any of our healthcare workers or anyone? Come. Teresa, would you pray for us?
Dear Heavenly Father, first we give thanks for the miracle of medicine and the advancements that we see in the technology and the medicine that we have today. We feel truly blessed to live in the time that we live. We also give thanks for those who make the choice to go into healthcare in whatever avenue and to use their minds for good and for caring. Lord, we often pray for patients, and in that prayer we lift a prayer about healthcare workers and pray that you will guide their hands and their hearts. And we do want that, Lord, but tonight's prayer, let it be to lift those who are working. There's weariness and there's tiredness. It's overwhelming for some so much that they're leaving. We just want to shed your light on them, shed your love on them. We want to help them feel appreciated. We want them to stay, and that we want them to continue their witness and their ability to care. Healthcare workers see a lot. We see joys and we can celebrate. We also see tragedy and pain. And with that, sometimes it lasts a lifetime for us, the things that we witness. And again, we just pray your mercy and your blessings on that and healing for them as well. Lord, show us what we can do to support our healthcare community, to support Hamilton, to support the individuals that are providing the care. Help us to be open to whatever those needs might be. And as we do that, let us be in service to you. Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.